Hi, in this video we are going to see what is the Django REST Framework API. So before going to learn the Django REST Framework API, you must have to know what is the Python, the Django. And I hope if you are learning the Django REST Framework API, it means you have already completed the Python and the Django framework. So let's start with the introduction part, like what is the Django REST framework and why we are using this Django REST framework. So first of all, what is the Django REST framework, which is also known as DRF? So the Django REST framework is the powerful and flexible toolkit for building the web APIs. Don't worry about the what is the web APIs. In this video, we are going to discuss in detail all the terminology. So just focus on the definition, like what is the Django REST framework? So the Django REST framework is the powerful and flexible toolkit for building a web API. Interviewer might be asked you, because of that only I am covering this theoretical part. It is the most commonly used framework in the Python to build the web API. This framework internally uses all the Django facilities like a model, view, templates, and URL. So this is the introduction of the Django REST framework. This Django REST framework is basically used to develop the API in the Python. Okay. So the next question might become why we need to learn the API. Don't worry, we will also discuss what is the API. But first of all, why we need to learn this API. So just see here, without API, our Django web application is like a human being without leg and hand. It is nothing more than one static project with limited use of scope. Let me tell you what I'm trying to say you. See, without API, we can develop the project. And if you see in the last video only, we have developed the Django help desk ticket system without using this web API. Okay. But the problem is that if you are going to develop any project without using the API, it means you are going to restrict that particular project with the limited use of scope. Okay. So with the help of the API, what we can do with the help of the API, we can allow data access and sharing, integrate with the third-party services, enhance the security and authentication system. So with the help of the API, what we can do, we can allow our application or our project to share the data with another application. And basically the API stand for the application programming interface. Okay. And the use of the API is to transfer or share the data or and to build the communication between the two applications. They might be in same language or in different language. Okay. So I hope you're clear. So the most common terminology used in the Django REST framework is the API, Web API, REST and REST API and RESTful API. These are the very more common terminology we are going to see in this particular video, or we can say in this particular Django REST framework series. So I'm going to explain one by one, like what is the API, what is the web API, what is the REST, what is the REST API or RESTful API. Okay. So start with the what is the API. So the API stand for Application Programming Interface. I'm repeating again, API. The API stand for Application Programming Interface. Okay. And one more thing, this Django REST framework it's a framework only, which is used to develop the web API. So keep in mind, okay? And come here. So what is the API? API stand for Application Programming Interface. And what is the use of this API? So here you can see an API used for communication, and in bracket I have written data sharing between two applications. For example, By using the API, Java application can communicate with Python application. Or don't think like that, only Java application can communicate with the Python application. No, any application written in any language can communicate with another application with the help of the API. I hope I'm clear. So the API stand for Application Programming Interface, and API used for building the communication between the two applications. And when I'm saying the communication, exactly what? So the communication between the application is nothing but the sharing the data. Okay, so keep in mind, when I'm using the word communication, it means they are sharing the data with each other. So I hope I'm clear what is the API. So the next things, what is the web API? So the interface of communication between the user might be any application. So don't be confused what is the user. This is might be any another application, and this is another application. So the interface of communication between the user and application over the web by using the HTTP is nothing but the web API. Let me tell you what I'm trying to say. For example, you have one project which is, or we have, for example, you have one website which is hosted on web, and you have one application. So with the help of a application, you want to access the services of the B application which is hosted on the server. At that time, we required one API, and those API is nothing but the web API. The API which is build the communication between the application and the web application. I'm repeating again, see what I'm trying to say. For example, you have one application A and you have one application B. For example, B is the hosted on the server. Okay. So from A application, if you want to access the services of the B application, which is hosted on the server or web, so at that time you require one API, and that kind of API is nothing but the web API. Here is the one example. One application want to communicate with the web application with the help of the API. Such type of API is known as the web API. Okay. So the next thing, what is the REST? Most of the people getting confused. REST is something technology or something library or etc. But in a simple way, first of all, REST stand for representational state transfer, and it is not any tool, it is not any library, nothing. REST is the architectural style, or what we can say, it is a guideline to develop the API. So the basically REST is the set of rules. We can simply say it's a set of rules or guideline to develop the web app, to develop the API. So if we are going to develop any API by following the guideline or architectural style of the REST, such type of API is going to be called as the REST API. Same thing, only we have written here. What is the REST API? The API which is developed by using the REST architectural style or guidelines is known as REST API. And REST API and RESTful API both are same thing. So don't be confused. What is the REST API and RESTful API? The API which is developed by the help of the REST architectural style or guidelines is nothing but the REST API or RESTful API. Again, we can develop API without REST also. So don't be think if we want to develop the API, then we have to use the REST framework only. No. Without REST framework also, we can develop the API, but it is very lengthy or time consuming process. We have to write lots of code. But with the help of the Django REST framework API, 90% of the code is already provided by the Django REST framework, which is also known as DRF. So don't be confused what is the DRF. In the interview room, interviewer might be asked what is the DRF. So DRF is nothing but the Django REST framework only. Okay. And the interviewer might be asked you what is the REST API, what is the RESTful API. So don't be confused. REST API, RESTful APIs, both are same thing. And the API which is developed with the help of the REST architectural style or guideline is known as REST API. I hope I'm clear. Then there is two very popular terminology, like what is the web service provider and web service consumer. So this is very simple thing. See, the application which is providing the web service is called web service provider. The application which is consuming the web data through the web services is called web service consumer. For example, Book My Show app and payment gateway. To complete our booking, Book My Show application will communicate with the payment gateway application. Hence, the payment gateway application act as the web service provider and Book My Show application act as a web service consumer. Let me try to explain you. See, service provider and service web service provider and web service consumer. The application which is providing the service is nothing but the web service provider, and the application which is using that particular service is nothing but the consumer. So if you have seen, if you are going to book any ticket, so for example, Book My Show is the one application through which we can book the ticket. Okay, but when we are booking the ticket, we after that we have to make the payment also. So this Book My Show is going to use the particular functionality of payment gateway to done the payment. It means payment gateway providing the service. It means payment gateway is the provider and Book My Show is using that particular service. It means the Book My Show is nothing but the consumer. I hope you are clear. Then there is two very important line you need to keep in mind. The common communication language is HTTP. The common message format is XML and JSON. So time being, no need to focus that much on this one, but keep in mind that particular common language is HTTP, hypertext transfer protocol, and the format is the XML or either XML or JSON. So in this video, we are going to learn. We are going to see in JSON format. XML previously was very popular, but right now JSON is booming. So we are going to see the JSON. So the next things, HTTP verbs or methods. So in the interview room, interviewer might be ask you what are the different HTTP verbs, or he can also ask what are the different HTTP methods. So let's see. HTTP represent the type of operation what we required. Based on our requirement, we have to use the corresponding HTTP verb or methods. The following are the various HTTP verbs like get, post, put, patch, delete. These all key have different operation to be performed. For example, this get method or HTTP verb is used to get one or more existing resource. For example, in database we have records. So with the help of this get method, we can fetch that particular data. Then post, to create the new resource. For example, you want to create the new entry in the database. At that time, we can use the post method. Then put, if we want to update the existing record, and if we want and all the fields, at that time we can use the put. So basically this put is used to update the existing record. Then patch, to perform the partial updating. See, put is used to update the records, like all the records of particular entry, and the patch is used to partially update, like few fields only, not all. Okay. Then delete, as usual, to delete the existing resources. And if you compare this operation or HTTP verbs with the database operation, so you can, I hope you know this CRUD operation. So this create is similar to the post, this retrieve is similar to the get, update is similar to the put and patch, and delete is similar to the delete. So I hope you are able to build the relationship between these two. Okay. See, in this video, we are going to focus on the theoretical part only, because once theoretically you are clear, like what is the Django REST framework, what is the API, what are the different operations supported by the Django REST framework or API, then only you will able to write the code. So don't think Like, let's start with the coding part only. No. First, you have to clear with the theory of the framework, this Django REST framework API. Okay. So because of that only, I'm covering this theoretical part. From next video, we will develop the APIs. Okay. So come here. Next thing, serializer. See, in the Django REST framework, serializers are very important things. Without serializer, you cannot do anything. Okay. So first we have to understand what is the serializers. So Django REST framework serializers are responsible for following activity. So this serializer are responsible for serialization, deserialization, and validation. So these three functionality or activities supported by these serializers. Okay. And in the serialization, we have a different serializer. For example, model serializer, hyperlink model serializer, list serializer, and we have many more serializer. So, but model serializer is the most popular serializer. Okay. So we are going to focus on this model serializer. So the next things, deserialization and validation. Note, DRF serialization will work very similar to the Django form and model form class. You are going to learn Django REST framework. Okay, it means you have already know the Django framework. So you are aware. So it means you are also aware with this Django forms and model form. So same thing I have trying to explain here. These serializers will work very similar to the Django forms and model forms. It means if you know how to create the Django form and model form, it means you are able to create the serializer also. It is very similar to this one. Okay. So theoretically, what is the serialization? See, pay attention. This is most important concept, serialization, deserialization. Okay. Because entire API development is depend on these things only. This is the base of the API development. Okay. So kindly pay attention. What is the serialization? So interviewer might be ask you, what is the serialization? So see here, the process of converting the complex object like model object and query set to the Python native data type like a dictionary is called serialization. I know most of the people not getting what I'm trying to say. I'm repeating again. The process of converting complex object like model object. We know what is the model object because we have already created model object in the Django framework many times. Okay. And query set. See, in simple word, let me tell you. For example, you have one model table. Okay. Or in your Django framework. So the particular, for example, there you have 10 records. For example, you have a name, address, city of the student, and you have a 10 record for different student. Okay. So one particular record is nothing but called as the object. I'm repeating again. For example, you have a 10 records of the student. So for if you're going to fetch one record, which is nothing but going to be called as the object. And if you're going to fetch more than one record, it is nothing but going to be called as the query set. So keep in mind, model object have only one record, query set having more than one record. So the process of converting the complex object like a model object and the query set to the Python native data type like a dictionary is called serialization. Okay, I hope I'm clear. The main advantage of converting into the Python native data type is we can convert or render very easily to the JSON or XML. Okay, as I told you in this particular series, we are going to see the JSON only. So let me remove the XML. And let me tell you, Python dictionary data type is 99% similar to the JSON data type. There is a one very slightly difference between the JSON data type and the Python dictionary. So if we are able to convert the complex data model object and query set to the dictionary, and dictionary is nothing but the inbuilt data type which is supported by the Python and Python. Okay, and as I told you, dictionary is the very similar, or we can say 99% similar to the JSON format. So it is very easy from the dictionary to convert into the JSON. So because of that only, we are using the serialization. So I'm repeating again, the process of converting complex data model object and query set into the dictionary is called serialization. And why we are converting into dictionary? Only because at last we have to convert that particular data into the JSON format, and Python dictionary is 99% similar to the JSON object. Okay, and why we need to convert into the JSON? Only because if you see here, the API is going to use the common message format is either XML or JSON. And as I told you, in the Django REST framework API, I'm going to use the JSON format. So because of that only, we are doing this serialization. And one more thing, if you remember, I have told you any application which is written in any language can communicate with another application which is written in any another language, irrespective of language. Okay, so Python application can communicate with the Java application. Java application can communicate with the C++ application. Any application can communicate with any another application, but the message formatting, or the way they are communicating, or you can say the language they are communicating, is the common. They only share the data in the JSON format or XML format. Okay, it means if you have a Java application and you have an application in a Python, and you want to build a communication between these two different applications, so you have to send the message in the JSON format only, or XML format also you can use. See, I'm not going to repeat again and again XML because I'm trying to focus on the JSON only. Okay, so keep in mind. So as I told you, JSON is the language which is understandable by all the programming language or application which is written in either C++, Java, Python, .NET, whatever. But these all the language know the JSON. So because of that only, if you want to send any data to any application, you have to convert that data into the JSON format. Then only you can transfer. Again, if you want to receive any data, then that particular application will first convert that data into the JSON, then it will send to you. Okay. Then what is the deserialization? Vice versa. See, as I told you, the process of converting complex object into the Python dictionary is called serialization. So for deserialization, the process of converting native data type to complex data type is called deserialization. Here also you can see the same thing. The process of converting Python native data types into complex data type like a model object is called deserialization. First, we have to convert JSON data type to Python native data type. Keep in mind, serialization, I have explained you very well. That deserialization is the vice versa, to reverse the process. Okay, then come here. Use case of serialization and deserialization. I have already explained you why we need to do the serialization and why we need to do the deserialization. But again, let's see. If the partner application get request, or in simple word you can say, if the one application sending the request, then we have to convert database specific model object or query set to the JSON form, and we have to send that JSON data to the partner application. Basically what I have written here, if you want to send any request or any data to any another application, so first from native data type 2, you have to convert into the JSON type. Okay, so to do that activity, we require the serialization. And vice versa, if the partner application send either post or put request with the same JSON data, then we have to convert into the that JSON data into the database specific form. For this, deserialization is required. So I hope I'm clear what is the serialization, what is the deserialization, and why they are used. Third one, validation by using the serializers. As I told you, in serialization, we have a 3 points or 3 activity. So third one is the validation. Like if you want to add the validation, at that time you can use this validation. So we have a validation at 3 different level, like field level, object level, and by using the validator. So don't be confused. When we are going to develop the API, at that time we will explore each and every. Okay. So the last one in this particular video, like different way of creating the API. So if you know the Django, you know we have different way of creating the views, like function-based view, class-based view, generic view. So the same thing here also. We have a function-based view, we have a class-based view, we have a view set, we have a generic views, we have a custom API views. It means you can create the API in different way. Like see, if you know the function-based views, so you can easily create the class-based view also. Okay, so these two things is almost same but a little bit different, so don't worry. And this view set and generic view have some inbuilt functionalities, so that will also we are going to be explored during the practical session. Okay, and here I have written custom API. So what I'm trying to say, even if you are not going to use the Django REST framework, you can develop the API, but it is a more lengthy process or more time consuming. You have to write each and every line by yourself only. So to avoid such things, we have a Django REST framework. And this Django REST framework is going to make our development very fast. So this is the entire theoretical part of the Django REST framework. I hope you are clear what is the Django framework, like what is the Django REST framework, why we need to learn the API, why we need to learn the Django REST framework API, what are the most commonly terminology. Okay. So thank you so much for watching this video. And in next video, we will start with the practical session. So please like and subscribe my channel. Bye.